87 men tried. 87 men failed. Some lasted 12 seconds. Some lasted 7. One confident former Marine from San Antonio lasted 18. Not a single man in Texas had survived 30 seconds against him. Not one. His name was Big Hank Decker, 6 feet 5 inches, 400 pounds of pure, unprocessed, terrifying human muscle. A former professional wrestler who had been kicked out of the AWA in 1958 for breaking a man's jaw with a slap during a match. He had not slapped him hard. He had slapped him casually. The doctors had wired the man's jaw shut for 6 weeks. After that, Big Hank could not get a legitimate fight in any state in the country. So he found something more profitable. Fear. He sold fear. And business was booming. The challenge was simple: survive 30 seconds, not win. Not fight. Not land a single punch. Just survive. Stay on your feet. Stay conscious. Don't tap out. Don't get thrown out of the ring. 30 seconds. That was all. The reward was $50,000. In 1962, that was more than most Texans earned in 5 years. Enough to buy a ranch outside Lubbock. Enough to buy a herd of 200 cattle. Enough to change a family's life for 2 generations. The catch was that in 87 attempts across 9 cities, no man had ever collected. Not once. The money sat in a locked metal box at the edge of every stage, visible, tempting, untouched. San Antonio, Texas, the old Cattlemen's Hall, April 22nd, 1962. Saturday night. The illegal fight circuit was in its 3rd season. The hall held 600 people that night. Almost full. The air smelled of cigarette smoke and beer and sweat. Whiskey bottles passed from hand to hand. Men in cowboy hats. Oil workers in heavy boots. Ranchers with sunburned necks and gold watches. But everyone knew why they were really there. Not for the cockfights in the basement. Not for the bare-knuckle boxing in the side rings. Not for the dogfights or the card games or the women. They were there for the main event, the thing printed in bold black letters on every poster, nailed to every telephone pole from Houston to El Paso, the Big Hank. Challenge: survive 30 seconds. Win $50,000. Below that, a record that read like a casualty report: 87 challenges, 87 defeated. Average survival time, 11.3 seconds. 3 men carried out on stretchers. 1 never walked again. And below that, a single line designed to reach into the chest of every Texan who read it and squeeze his pride until it either inflated or collapsed. Are you man enough? In the 7th row, an older gentleman in a worn brown leather jacket folded the program in half and slipped it into his coat pocket. His weathered face showed nothing. His blue eyes did not blink. His name was John Wayne, 55 years old. 240 pounds. 6'4". The same man who had ridden across 1,000 movie screens. The same man who had survived a horse fall on the set of the Comancheros that should have killed him. The same man who 2 years from now would lose his left lung to cancer and 4 ribs to the surgeons. So that man was sitting in the 7th row of a smoky Texas hall, reading a poster that said, "No human being in." Texas could survive 30 seconds against Big Hank Decker, and something behind his eyes had just changed. 2 days earlier, his old friend Ben Johnson had called him. Ben was a stuntman, a former rodeo champion. He had worked on more John Wayne pictures than either of them could remember. He lived outside San Antonio on a small horse ranch. Ben had heard about the fights at the Cattlemen's Hall. He had not gone himself. But his cousin had gone, and his cousin had told him things. Ben said, "Duke, there's a giant down at the old hall. Almost 400 pounds. He's been crushing every fighter in Texas. 87 men in 9 cities. Nobody has lasted 30 seconds. Not boxers. Not wrestlers. Not Marines. Not even old Joe Brennan from Houston, and Joe was a Golden Gloves champion in 1948. Wayne was quiet on the phone. Ben knew that silence. Ben said, "Duke, I'm not telling you this so you'll do something about it. I'm telling you because the kid who runs the place is from my hometown. He told my cousin that Big Hank put one of his challengers in a wheelchair last month. The man can't walk. He may never walk, and the police won't touch the place because the sheriff is on the take." Wayne lit a cigarette. He took a long drag. He said, "What's his style?" Ben paused. He said, "Duke, you're 55 years old," Wayne said. "I asked you a question, Ben." Ben sighed. He said, "He doesn't really have one. He's just enormous. He grabs you. Once he grabs you, the fight is over. He picks men up and slams them. He squeezes their ribs until they crack. The strength is so overwhelming that technique becomes meaningless." Wayne asked a second question. He said, "How does he close the distance?" Ben said, "What do you mean?" Wayne said, "How does he get to a man? Does he rush? Does he wait? Does he circle? Left foot first or right? Does he drop his head? Does he keep his arms wide?" Ben thought about it. He said, "He charges him straight forward, both arms wide, like a bear. He tries to wrap a man up in a clinch. Once his arms close around you, your feet leave the ground." Wayne said nothing for 4 seconds. Ben counted. Then Wayne said, "A bear charge with both arms wide leaves the chest open. Means his throat and his solar plexus have no protection for about 2 seconds during the entry." 2 seconds is a long time, Ben. Ben felt the cold travel up his back. He had known Wayne for 25 years. He had watched Wayne work. He knew what Wayne could do in 2 seconds. Most men can blink 3 times in 2 seconds. Wayne could do other things. Ben said, "Duke, you're not going to do this." Wayne said, "Buy me a ticket. 7th row. And don't tell my wife where I'm going." The line went quiet. Then Ben said, "Yes, sir." Now they were here, the Cattlemen's Hall, Saturday night. 600 Texans, drinking and shouting and laying down bets on the slips of paper that the runners passed through the crowd. The poster on the wall said 87. The metal box at the edge of the stage held $50,000 in $100 bills. The lights dropped. A single spotlight hit center stage. The crowd noise dropped to a murmur, then to a hush. A voice came through the speaker system, deep, rough. The voice of a man who had been calling fights in illegal rings for 20 years. He said, "Ladies and gentlemen, though I don't see any ladies, welcome to the main event of the night." Laughter rolled through the hall. He said, "You all know the rules. You all know the man. You all know the money. There are 87 men in this state who think they were tough. 87 men who walked up onto this stage. 87 men who walked off it on their backs." The announcer paused. He let the silence work. He said, "Tonight, gentlemen, we are looking for number 88. A voice in the crowd shouted, "Make it 89, Ray. Make it 90. Laughter again. Whiskey laughter. The kind that was half real and half nervous. The announcer said, "The rules are simple. You step into the ring. The bell rings. If you are still standing, still conscious, and still inside the ropes after 30 seconds, the box is yours. $50,000, cash, American." He gestured to the metal box. The spotlight swung to it. 600 men leaned forward in their chairs. The box was the size of a small suitcase. It sat on a wooden table. A man in a black suit stood beside it with one hand on the lid. The announcer said, "Ben, show them." The man in the black suit opened the box. Stacks of green bills, crisp, tightly bound. More money than most of the men in the room had ever seen at one time. The smell of new paper drifted up from the box. The crowd murmured. The announcer said, "Now, please welcome the man who has made that money untouchable. The undefeated, the unstoppable. The reason 87 Texans currently sleep on their stomachs because their ribs are too cracked to lie on their backs. Standing 6'5", 400 pounds. From parts unknown. Big Hank Decker." The stage shook before the audience saw him. That was not a metaphor. The actual wooden boards of the stage vibrated as he walked out from behind the canvas curtain at the back of the hall. You felt him before you saw him. 100 men gasped. They had seen big men before. Texas was full of them. Oil rig workers who pushed steel pipes for a living. Ranchers who could carry a bull calf on their shoulders. But this was something else entirely. Big Hank Decker was not fat. That was the terrifying part. He was massive in a way that seemed biologically wrong. His shoulders were as wide as some doorways. His chest was a barrel of solid meat wrapped in skin, stretched thin. His thighs were thicker than most men's waists. His hands hung at his sides like 2 raw hams. His head was small in proportion to his neck. His neck was small in proportion to his shoulders. His shoulders had nearly absorbed his neck entirely. He walked to the center of the stage. He stood under the spotlight. He did not flex. He did not pose. He did not need to. His existence was his demonstration. The shadow he cast covered half of the wooden floor. The audience was silent now, not respectful silence. Terrified silence. The silence of cattle who can sense a predator on the wind. Big Hank did not speak. He never spoke during the challenge. Not in 9 cities. Not in 87 fights. The announcer did the talking. Big Hank just stood there and let gravity do his introduction, but he had a ritual. The same one every time. He walked to the edge of the stage. He picked up an iron horseshoe from a small bucket. The horseshoe was new. Heavy steel. The kind that had been hammered onto the foot of a draft horse 1,000 times in the past century. He held it up. He showed it to the crowd. He took it in both hands. He pulled. For 3 seconds, the iron resisted him. Then it gave. The horseshoe bent in his hands like a piece of soft wire. The 2 ends curled inward toward each other. He kept pulling. The metal screamed under the pressure. The shape of the horseshoe collapsed. By the end, he was holding what looked like a tightly twisted piece of dark licorice. He dropped it. It hit the wooden stage with a dead, heavy thump. The crowd did not clap. They did not breathe. A man in the 3rd row stood up and walked out. He was not the first to leave that night, and he would not be the last. The first challenger was a Marine, Sergeant Roy Carlson. 230 pounds. 31 years old, crew cut. Combat tour in Korea, Bronze Star. He took off his shirt before he climbed into the ring. The muscles on his back were like rope. The bell rang. He lasted 4.1 seconds. Big Hank charged. Both arms wide. The bear charge that Ben had described to Wayne on the telephone 2 days earlier. Carlson tried to slip to his right. Big Hank's right hand caught his shoulder. His left hand caught his hip. Carlson left the ground. He came down on his back, hard. The wooden stage thudded. Dust rose from the cracks. Carlson did not move. The medic ran out. He checked his eyes. He checked his ribs. He waved for a stretcher. 3 men carried Sergeant Roy Carlson off the stage. He was breathing, but he was not awake. The announcer said, 88. Next challenger. The crowd was quiet now. The earlier laughter was gone. The whiskey did not feel as warm. The men in the front rows looked at each other and did not say anything. The second challenger was a wrestler. A college kid from Texas A&M, 265 pounds. Big 12 champion at heavyweight. He came up onto the stage with a sneer on his face. He thought he had figured out the trick. He thought everybody before him had been an amateur. He lasted 5.8 seconds. The third challenger was an oil rig worker from Odessa. 280 pounds of pure brawler. He had been in 87 bar fights, by his own count. He had won 86 of them. The one he had lost had been against 3 men with a tire iron. He lasted 7.2 seconds. The fourth challenger was a Mexican prizefighter from Laredo. He was the fastest man in the building. His footwork was beautiful. He floated like a moth around Big Hank for 6 seconds. He lasted 9.3 seconds before Big Hank caught him by the wrist and slung him into the ropes. 4 men. 4 failures. The metal box still locked. The $50,000 still untouched. The announcer scanned the room. His voice had lost some of its theater. He said, "Anyone else?" "Last call, $50,000. 30 seconds. "Anyone?" Silence. 600 men sat very still. The math had been done. 87 men before tonight. 4 men tonight. 91 challenges. 91 defeats. Different sizes. Different styles. Different backgrounds. Different states of the union. Same result every time. Grabbed, lifted, slammed, done. The announcer waited. He was about to close the challenge. He was about to add 4 more names to the list of the defeated. 91 and counting. Then a quiet voice said, "I'll have a go." The voice came from the 7th row. It carried no aggression. No bravado. No chest-thumping declaration of Texas courage. Just 5 words spoken the way a man orders a steak in a quiet restaurant. "I'll have a go." The announcer squinted into the haze beyond the stage lights. He said, "Who said that?" A man stood up, 7th row. "Aisle seat." brown leather jacket, dark wool pants, cowboy boots that had been polished an hour earlier, a plain white shirt under the jacket, no costume, no hat. The first thing the audience noticed was that he was old, not regular old in the context of what he was volunteering for. The 4 men who had just failed had been 31, 23, 28, and 26 years old. This man looked at least 50. The second thing the audience noticed was that he was not large, he was tall. But he was not a giant. 240 pounds, maybe. A normal big man. Big Hank Decker had 160 pounds on him. The third thing the audience noticed was that they recognized him. Murmurs began to ripple through the hall. A man in the 4th row whispered something to the man next to him. The man next to him stood up to look. He sat back down quickly. His face was white. Another voice said, "Holy hell." "That's John Wayne," another voice said. "That can't be John Wayne. What's John Wayne doing in San Antonio?" Another voice said, "I'm telling you that's the Duke." The murmur turned into a low, electric buzz. The announcer was confused. He had not been told that John Wayne was in the audience. He had not expected this. Nobody in this part of Texas, in this part of the underground fighting circuit, had expected this. He said, "Sir, are you sure?" Wayne stepped out of his row. He walked down the aisle slowly. The crowd parted for him. Hands reached out to pat his shoulder. He did not stop. He did not acknowledge them. He walked the way a man walks toward a job he does not want to do, but has decided to do anyway. He reached the stage. He climbed the 3 steps. His boots made a measured, careful sound on the wood. He walked to the center. He stood in front of the announcer. He said, "I'm sure." The announcer stared at him. He said, "Mr. Wayne, sir, this is full contact. There are no rules. There are no weight classes. You have just seen what this man can do." Wayne said, "I know how old I am, son. Get me a clipboard." The announcer got him a clipboard. He said, "Name?" Wayne said, "John Wayne." The announcer wrote it. He said, "Weight?" Wayne said, 240. The announcer wrote it. He said, "Style?" Wayne said, "I learned how to fight from a man named Yakima Canutt in 1930. Before that, I played football at USC. I've been on every kind of movie set this country has produced. I've been knocked down by horses, hit by chairs, and clipped by professional stuntmen for 35 years. Write down whatever you want." The announcer wrote Western. He looked up. He said, "Sir, last chance. You can walk away right now. Nobody will say a word." Wayne said, "I came up here because I read in your poster that no man in Texas could last 30 seconds. I'm a Texan tonight, son. I aim to test that." The announcer nodded slowly. He stepped back. Big Hank Decker was watching this from his corner of the stage. He had heard the name John Wayne. He had been raised on John Wayne pictures, the way every American boy of his generation had been raised. He had paid a quarter to see Stagecoach when he was 9 years old. He had stood in line for Red River when he was a teenager. Now he was looking across a wooden stage at the Duke himself. He felt nothing. He felt only one thing: money. The $50,000 in the metal box was his money. It belonged to him. The challengers were paid $200 to step up. He took home everything else. The bigger the name in the ring, the bigger the gate. Tonight's gate would be the biggest of his career. He smiled. Slowly, his teeth were yellow. He cracked his neck. The announcer rang the bell. What happened next took 6 seconds. The crowd agreed on that. Later, 6 seconds. Maybe 7. Nobody was watching a clock. Everybody was watching the 2 men on the stage, but it was very, very fast. Big Hank charged first. He did what Big Hank always did. He rushed forward. Both arms wide, head down. 400 pounds of human freight train covering the 8 feet between them in less than 2 seconds. This was the moment that had ended 87 men. This was the moment that had broken ribs and dislocated shoulders and put a man in a wheelchair. This was the, avalanche. Every previous challenger had done one of 3 things. Some had frozen. Some had retreated. Some had attacked. All 3 responses had failed. John Wayne did not do any of those things. He stepped forward, into the charge, toward 400 pounds of oncoming destruction. The crowd gasped. Several men in the front rows looked away. They did not want to watch the collision. A 240-pound man moving toward a 400-pound charge is not bravery. It is mathematics. And the mathematics said this man was about to be destroyed. But the collision did not happen. In the 1 3/4 seconds it took Big Hank to cross the ring, Wayne had moved forward and to his own left. Not far, 18 inches, just enough to be outside the arc of Big Hank's outstretched right arm. Just enough to let 400 pounds of momentum rush past him like a freight train. Passing a man standing 1 foot from the track, you felt the wind, you felt the ground shake, but you were untouched. Big Hank's right arm closed on empty air, his momentum carried him 2 steps past. Where Wayne had been standing, for the first time in 88 challenges, Big Hank Decker had grabbed nothing. The crowd made a single, sharp sound, like the bark of a dog. Big Hank turned around, confused, off balance. His face had the expression of a man who has reached for a glass of water and discovered the glass was not there. He resets. He faces Wayne again. He charges again. Faster this time, angrier. Wayne moves again, same direction, left. But this time, he does not just evade. As Big Hank's massive right arm sweeps past him for the second time, Wayne's right hand touches it, lightly, 2 fingers on the inside of the wrist. Not pushing, not grabbing, guiding. The arm that was meant to trap him continues its arc, but now travels 2 inches further than Big Hank intended. 2 inches. In a fight, 2 inches is the difference between capture and freedom. Big Hank's arms close behind Wayne's back. Behind him, grabbing each other instead of their target. Big Hank is hugging himself. 400 pounds of confused momentum stumbling forward, while a 240-pound, 55-year-old movie star stands calmly. Behind him like a matador who has just let the bull pass, the crowd cannot process what they are seeing. Their brains reject it. This older man is not just surviving. He is making the giant miss, repeatedly, effortlessly, like it is choreographed, but it is not choreographed. Big Hank's frustration is real. His confusion is genuine. His breath is getting heavier. He has never worked this hard in 87 fights. He has never had to chase a challenger, and challengers come to him. They get grabbed. They fail. That is the script. This man is rewriting the script. Big Hank charges a 3rd time. Every ounce of 400 pounds committed. No technique. No strategy. Pure animal aggression. The mountain coming down on the village. This time, Wayne does not just evade. He steps inside, close, impossibly close. Inside the radius of Big Hank's arms, where the grab has no power. His right foot plants between Big Hank's massive boots. He pivots his hips. His right hand rises from below in a single fluid motion. The way a carpenter swings a hammer. The way a railroad man swings a sledge. From the hip, from the legs, the full weight of 240 pounds traveling up through the shoulder into the fist. It is the punch he learned from a man named Yakima Kanut in 1930. It is the punch that has knocked down 9 real men in 9 real bar fights across 30 years of his life. It is the punch that no camera has ever filmed. It all catches Big Hank Decker square on the point of his jaw, right under the chin. The exact spot every old prizefighter aims for and almost never hits clean. Big Hank's head snaps back, his eyes roll up, his arms drop to his sides like cut ropes. For a single, suspended half-second, his 400-pound body just stands there. Conscious has left him. Gravity has not yet taken him. Then his knees give way. He does not stumble. He does not stagger. He does not catch himself on the ropes. He falls straight, backward like a tree. His massive body hits the wooden boards of the stage with a sound that 600 Texans will remember for the rest of their lives. The whole stage shakes. Wooden chair at the edge of the platform jumps 2 inches into the air. Dust rises from the cracks in the floor. The hall goes silent. For 3 seconds, 4, 5, nobody breathes, nobody speaks. Big Hank Decker, the unbeaten, the unstoppable, the 400-pound mountain of East Texas, lies flat on his back in the center of the wooden stage. His arms are spread wide. His eyes are closed. His chest is rising and falling slowly. The medic runs to him. He checks his pulse. He listens to his breathing. He looks up at the announcer. He nods. He is alive. He is just out. The hall detonates. 600 men erupt, standing, stomping, roaring. The wooden bleachers shake harder than the stage ever did under Big Hank's feet. Hats fly into the air. Beer bottles tip over. A man in the back row falls down. A man in the front row falls into a man behind him. The sound is like a thunderstorm, trapped indoors. John Wayne stands in the center of the stage. He looks down at the empty space where Big Hank had been. He looks at the crowd. He bows his head slightly, the way a man does at the end of a long shift. He turns. He walks to the edge of the stage. He climbs down the 3 steps. He walks back up the aisle. Past the 7th row, past the 6th, past the 5th, past the 4th, past the 3rd. The crowd parts for him. Hands slap his shoulders. Voices shout his name. He nods at no one in particular. He keeps walking. At the back of the hall, near the door, the announcer comes running. The announcer has the metal box. He holds it out. He says, "Mr. Wayne, the money. It's yours. You earned it. $50,000. Wayne stops. He looks at the box. He looks at the announcer. He looks past the announcer at the stage. Big Hank is sitting up now. The medic is helping him. He looks dazed, confused, like a man waking up from a strange dream. Wayne says, "How many men did he put in the hospital?" The announcer says, 3, sir. 3 were stretchered. 1 was paralyzed. Wayne says, "That last man. The paralyzed one. Where does his family live?" The announcer says, "Outside Lubbock. He has a wife. 2 daughters. They lost the farm last month. Hospital bills." Wayne nods slowly. He says, "Send them every dollar in that box. Every last dollar. You hear me?" The announcer's mouth opens. He closes it. He opens it again. He says, "Sir, that's $50,000. Wayne says, "I can count, son. Send it to the family. All of it. And don't tell them where it came from. Tell them an old friend of their daddy wanted to help." He pauses. He says, "And shut this place down." The announcer says, "Sir?" Wayne says, "This place. This thing you're running. You're putting men in wheelchairs for money. You're paying off the sheriff. You're breaking up families. I want this place closed by next month. You understand me?" The announcer stares at him. He says, "Yes, sir." Wayne says, "I'll be checking." He pushes the door open. He walks out into the Texas night. The story of what happened in the Cattlemen's hall that night was never written down in any newspaper. The hall was closed within 3 weeks. Big Hank Decker was driven out of Texas by the sheriff's department, who suddenly remembered that they did not approve of illegal underground fighting. He moved to Mexico. He was never heard from again. The $50,000 arrived in Lubbock the following Tuesday. A plain envelope. A typed letter. No return address. The widow of the paralyzed man, her name was Edna Crane, and her husband's name was Tom, opened the envelope at her kitchen table. She counted the money 4 times. She called her sister in El Paso. She paid off the hospital. She paid off the mortgage. She bought her 2 daughters new shoes. She would spend the rest of her life trying to find out who had sent it. She never did. But the men who were in the Cattlemen's hall that night, the 600 Texans who saw it with their own eyes, they remembered. They told the story in bars in Houston, in barbershops in Amarillo, in churches in Austin, around campfires on cattle drives, around dinner tables in farm kitchens. They told the story to their sons told it to their grandsons. By the 1980s, when most of the men who had been there were dying off, the story had become a kind of legend, a piece of folklore, a thing that may or may not have happened. Nobody could prove it. There were no photographs. There was no film. There was no police record because the police had been on the take. There was only the word of 600 Texans. And the word of 600 Texans is generally enough. In 1978, a year before Wayne's death, a young journalist for the Dallas Morning News tracked him down at his ranch in Encino, California. The journalist had spent 2 years collecting accounts of the Cattlemen's Hall, fight from old men in San Antonio who claimed to have been there. He had assembled the story. He had verified it from 17 different sources. He sat across from John Wayne in Wayne's living room, he told him. Everything he had learned. He asked, "Mr. Wayne, is it true?" Wayne was 71 years old by then. The cancer that would kill him in 18 months was already eating him from the inside. He was thinner than the journalist had expected. His blue eyes were tired but clear. Wayne listened to the entire account. He did not interrupt. When the journalist finished, Wayne sat for a long time without speaking. Then he said, "Son, I'll tell you what. You write that story however you want to write it. I'm not going to confirm it. I'm not going to deny it. There are some things a man does not because he wants to be remembered for them, but because he could not live with himself if he did not do them." He paused. He said, "If you write that story, you write it like this. You write that some old Texas widow got $50,000 in the mail one Tuesday in 1962, and a couple of little girls got new shoes, and a paralyzed cowboy got his hospital bills paid. You write that, and you let the rest go." The journalist nodded. He went home. He never published the story. He kept his notes in a drawer for 38 years. When he died, in 2016, his daughter found the notes. She read them. She called the daughter of Edna Crane. Edna Crane's daughter was 64 years old. She lived in a small house in Lubbock. Her mother had been dead for 30 years. Her father had died a few years after the money came. He had never walked again, but his last years had been comfortable. Because of the money. The journalist's daughter told her the story. She listened. She did not say anything for a long time. Then she said, very quietly, "I always wondered who sent it." She paused. She said, "I always wondered if I would ever find out." She wiped her eyes. She said, "The Duke, my God, the Duke. Some say the story of the Cattlemen's Hall is just legend. A tall tale grown over the decades, told by old Texans who wanted to believe that a movie star had walked into their part of the world one Saturday night in 1962 and put a 400-pound monster on the floor. Some say it never happened. Some say it happened differently. Some say there was no Big Hank Decker, no Edna Crane, no envelope of $50,000. But the men who were there, the old Texans who saw it with their own eyes, the ones who lived to be 80 and 90 and would tell the story to anyone who would listen, they swore it was true. They swore that on a hot April night in 1962, a 400-pound monster who had crushed 87 men was knocked off a stage in San Antonio in 6 seconds. They swore the man who did it was John Wayne. They swore the money in the medal box went to a widow in Lubbock. They swore the hall was closed by the sheriff 3 weeks later, after a phone call from somewhere in California. Believe what you want to believe. But the next time you watch an old John Wayne movie, the next time you see him walk into a saloon, the next time you see him face down a man bigger and meaner and louder than himself, remember, some of those scenes were acting, and some of them weren't. They don't make men like the Duke anymore. They don't make Texans like the ones who packed the Cattlemen's Hall on a Saturday night in 1962. They don't make widows who count $50,000 in a kitchen 4 times to be sure they are not dreaming. That world is gone, but every now and then, in some bar in some small town in Texas, an old man will lean across to a younger man, and he will say, "Let me tell you a story about a 400-pound monster, and John Wayne, and a metal box of money that went to a widow in Lubbock who never knew where it came from." The young man will lean in, the old man will start to talk, and somewhere, wherever good men go when their work on this earth is done, John Wayne is sitting on a quiet porch in a quiet evening, watching the sun go down over a country that he loved more than it ever knew. He is smiling because he is exactly where he belongs. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of a father or a grandfather, or a man you once knew who quietly did the right thing without ever asking for credit, please take a moment to subscribe. We have more stories coming. Stories of the Duke. Stories of a Texas that used to exist. Stories of an America that we must never, ever forget. They don't make men like the Duke anymore. But as long as we keep telling these stories, we make sure he is never forgotten. Until next time, keep your powder dry. Keep your word good and ride tall in the saddle. The Duke would have wanted it that way.